All right, good morning. My name is Temi Coker. I am, like Doug said, a husband, photographer, designer, and entrepreneur. And today, I'm going to talk to you about a topic that you guys have been seeing online for a while. And it's on the topic of, do limits lead to creativity? And the answer is yes. Let me see. I think I missed the slide. I'm just going to try to replay this again. Help? Okay, yes. That's what I was looking for. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. One thing I've learned in my life is that limitation is kind of like the fertile ground in which the seeds of creativity grow, right? And without the challenge of limitation, there's no need for creativity. So I want you guys to think back to 3rd through 6th grade when you had to make projects and they put you inside a box of like, you need to make a project about this topic. You can only use paper and scissors and glitters or whatever. If you remember how you felt in those moments and how creative you wanted to be, even within that limitation, it was exciting. And for me, it was really an awesome opportunity for me to use what I could to make something amazing that didn't look like everything that everyone else made in class, right? And today I'm going to talk to you about 3 ways limits lead to creativity. And the first one is that limited resources increase output and thinking. So I come from Nigeria. I was born and raised in Lagos, Nigeria, and I came here 2004. And working on this talk, I had to go back to just think about some of the fun things I did in Nigeria, right? And I'm going to talk more about those later, but one thing that this reminded me about was a time in my life when I was just focused on using the iPhone to take pictures. This is before I started photography. So this was around the time the iPhone 3G came out, right? And I kind of put myself in this weird box because I could not afford a camera or anything like that. And so what I was doing was I was using the iPhone 3G. I found apps within the App Store, and I started just making stuff, right? As you can see, paint splatter. That one up there was like my profile picture for like 3 years. I thought it was like the sickest thing ever. And now it's like trash. And as you can see, I went to U of H, and so we have there was an app that you could make like a fake bokeh. So I was using that. So this was like ways for me to like test out my creativity. And this was kind of the journey that started just kind of how I pushed myself and pushed the iPhone to its limits. And you can see I did the rain. I mean, this was actually summer, and I used the filter to make it look like it was rain. But as I started doing this stuff, my style started to get better. I started to kind of hone in on what I was doing. Even though I was limiting myself to the iPhone, I was able to learn about different apps to kind of get the feel that I wanted. And the reason I stuck with the iPhone was just because I didn't have patience to learn Photoshop at the time, right? And some of the stuff you could do in Photoshop, I wanted to be able to do on my phone because I just liked to see my product right there and then, rather than having to go to a computer, edit the picture, take it into Photoshop, design, export, put it on your phone. And so this is kind of how that started, and then it kept growing, and I started figuring out ways to kind of get the feel that I actually wanted. And limiting myself to the iPhone made me think outside the box, right? If you look at these 2 pictures, I started a series called Flying Colors, and it just started from the thought of what is it like to be free? And this was like my own interpretation. Those of you who know how to use Photoshop, you know that more than likely I took this person out of the background, right? But with the iPhone, you can't really use the selection tool like that, right? And so I had to think outside of the box, and I had to go to places where there was a white wall, right? Because the contrast between the person and the white wall made it easy for my phone to be able to take the person out of the background. And then sometimes there was no white wall, so I would find a hill and go to the sky and like use the sky as a backdrop. And so I just started thinking of different ways to kind of get the result that I wanted. And so the project grew, and I started doing more stuff like this. This is my baby sister. I promise she was not hurt. She was just jumping off of like a table. And that's my other friend as well. We actually jumped off a hill. But the way I shot it and the way I was able to put him in the clouds was just something that I wanted to do. And of course, the project grew a lot more. And I'm thinking about bringing it back. I don't know what you guys think. Should I try to bring it back? Yeah. He is still alive, by the way. So the second thing is that innovation is a creative person's response to limitation. Think about the society we used to live in before Instagram and Google and even the iPhone. But people who innovated these apps were actually in our society and saw the limitations within our society. And that is what pushed them to start making all of this stuff. Social media wasn't like a crazy thing. You know, it was an idea that someone had, and it was like, man, I can't share my stuff with my friends and family. I have to like either send it through email, and email was trash back then. And so the person that kind of brought this together brought that out of the limitations in our society. And it was funny enough that I was talking about this because 3 days ago, these 5 African guys called the Critics, they started making like big movies just using their smartphones. And I thought it was silly at first until I saw the 10-minute clip, and I was like, oh shoot, this is dope. As you can see, they're using the smartphone here and they're using green screen technology. But they're in Africa, right? And they don't have as many resources as we do here, but they were able to use what they could to make this like movie with like 3D backgrounds. I mean, it almost looked like iRobot because he had the robotic arms and everything like that. And they used that just from a smartphone, right? And they just thought outside of the box, right? And this is not even like a green cloth that they're using, you know? They just were very creative, and this is not like what you would normally use to hold your iPhone, right? And so they used what they could within the limitations that they were in, and they made something creative, and it just got them to think outside the box as well. One thing that I loved about this was that these kids did this so they could grow, and I believe like a year or two later, they actually got funded to be able to buy all the stuff they needed. And to render all of this stuff, even like this clip right here, took about 2 days. So think about like the patience they had to endure. Think about how they had to think about things ahead of time, because it's going to take 2 days for this like 2-second or 5-second thing to render. And so it was just inspiring to me to see people from my country just doing amazing work within the limited resources. And then I found this artist called Michael Johansson, and pretty much what he does is that he put himself in this box of, I'm only going to use things that I find in the junk shop. And he started making art with that. And it was just amazing because he's way better than this, but he wanted to put himself in this box to kind of just push himself more and learn what he can through this process. And because of this, I think he found his purpose, he found his style, and he's now becoming popular and doing this all around the world. And it all started from him putting himself in this box of, for this next year, I'm only going to focus on using things from the junk store to make art. And I was just really inspired by that. The third lesson is that when people face scarcity, they give themselves the freedom to use resources in less conventional ways because they have to. And for me, growing up in Nigeria, I used my imagination because I didn't have the resources to get what I needed, right? This allowed, I was able to kind of go back in time to see the games I used to play when I was younger. Does anyone remember this stuff? Yes? All right. In Nigeria, a piece of paper was not a piece of paper to me. It was a camera, right? I would draw a person's face, put it in there. I would run around, find people, and take a picture, and this picture would pop out, right? And it was just an amazing experience because the idea came from here, right? I saw someone make this. I asked them how I could make it. I started making it, and I had like a bunch of cameras, paper cameras. And it was just fun. And looking back, I realized that, you know, even though I had limited resources, I had a lot of creativity up here, right? Does anyone know what I did with this? Anyone? No? Okay. In Nigeria, we used to collect this stuff for fun, and we used to play soccer with them. So like all of the Sprite would be a team, all of the Coca-Cola would be a team, and we'll literally make our own like goal with paper, and each take turns and use our thumbs to like move the players around. And looking back, I could see that I was really bored, first of all, but but it was just creative. Like I was learning how to use things that people would normally just throw away and learn how to use them in unconventional ways, right? And it was a lot of fun. And so same thing here with these tires. It's very silly, but in Nigeria, we would race with the tires. So we'll go up a hill, have the tires go down, and we would try to beat the tires. And of course, we lost. But it was just fun. It was just fun being creative and finding stuff to do that brought joy to us, regardless of the lack of resources that we had over there. And this is kind of what started my whole project, Temi by Nigeria. I have the book here, and I'll let you guys check it out later. But I went to Nigeria in 2014 for my grandma's birthday. And her birthday's the day before mine. So after I photographed her for her birthday, my birthday was the next day, and I asked our driver to take me around Nigeria so that I could just see where I came from, right? Because I had been in America for about 10 years. And so I wanted to make sure I went back and visited areas that I was in. And I started sharing on social media because I remember that when I was in high school and middle school, people always asked me, Temi, did you hunt lions for breakfast? And did you have shoes? Did you live in the house or did you live in the hut? All of this like stuff. And they were asking that because of what they saw on the Discovery Channel, right? Do you guys remember what was on the Discovery Channel over there back in the day? Yeah. People used to talk to me like, I was like, really? I speak English? But yeah, and going back to Nigeria and just like seeing it from a photographic lens and seeing it from a different perspective of gratitude made me really realize how happy and creative and smart these people are, and my people in Nigeria are. Like if you come to Nigeria, you have, I don't know what they call it, but when you have the baby on the strap in front of you, what do they call that? Yeah, whatever, baby strap. If you come to Nigeria, they're gonna look at you crazy, right? Because we don't have access to those things like we do here. And so what they decided to do is they started using scarves to carry the baby. And so that's like the norm over there. Like even when we came here, my youngest sister, she was about less than 2 years old. My mom would use a scarf here. She was like, I'm not going to the store to go buy a $100 thing to hold my baby. I'm gonna use a scarf. And looking back, like that's just creativity, because we would use a scarf here for our hair and different things like that. Same thing here, like we don't have like buildings for shops and different things like that, but people still used what they had. So things like using wood and using metal for the roof and things like that. It was just awesome being able to see from a different lens. Like someone would see this and be like, oh, they're poor. But I see this and I'm like, man, these people are creative, right? Same thing with this. This is how they sell stuff in Nigeria, right? Put stuff on your head and you balance it and you walk. And to me, again, like people can see like, oh, this person is poor, but I'm like, they're using what they could and what they could afford to make ends meet, right? And contrary to popular beliefs, I think Uber started in Nigeria. Don't quote me on that. But these people, like, they would literally just stay there and wait for people to come and tell them that they want to go somewhere. And motorcycles are better than taxis because they literally would go through the cars during traffic and you can get to your place faster. And here's also some people being creative here. They would go to the gas station, buy a bunch of gas, and take this around and start pulling it around the city. Why? Because in Nigeria, there's a lot of traffic and people lose their gas. And it happens a lot. And so these people will come and charge you out the wazoo, but you'll be able to drive your car. And so going back to this topic, like scarcity doesn't always mean materialistic things. So for me, it could mean skills, it could mean different things. But for me personally, I think my scarcity was like I couldn't draw. I still can't. I try. If anyone knows how to draw, please come teach me. But what this pushed me to do was I had to learn to use other resources in less conventional ways because I had to. So because I couldn't draw, I started focusing on shapes. And so this year, I guess you can say my limitation is that I'm going to focus on using shapes in photography and making something new. And that's what I started doing. And so I started creating things like this, right? Using shapes on the portrait. Now, I had to learn how to like make the hair on this guy. I used an unconventional way. I went to Google and I searched high top fade of someone's head, and then I put it on top of the image and I traced it, okay, because I can't draw. But it's just using like my limitations to figure out how to still work within those limitations and making something new. And I think, honestly, me working in this limitation kind of allowed me to actually see my gift, find my purpose, find my style. People see this now and they automatically know that this is Temi Coker's work. And it's just been amazing to be able to get that feedback and know that I made the right choice by knowing that I couldn't draw, but figuring a way to still kind of have that artistic feel to my artwork. And so I started making more stuff like this. And it was awesome. I would do portraits of my friends. I would take pictures of other people and just create things using shapes. And because of that, companies have started reaching out to me to actually utilize photography and shapes and making something new. And so the most recent project was with Google. I got the opportunity to work on 2 art pieces for Google for an event that's happening tonight in LA. And they initially wanted all illustrations, and I was like, I can't draw. And so I'm glad I spoke up and I was able to tell them, like even these pictures of these people, if I tell you how I did this, some of you guys might cringe, but pretty much they're all pictures, and I just filled it with black. Sorry. But it's just how I think, right? And also, like, if I wanted to, I could take it in Illustrator and trace it, but I just didn't feel like it. And so this is what I did. And then got to work with Apple Music. Same exact thing. They wanted me to use shapes. And so I kind of made this for Apple Music. Also got to work with Essence Magazine, using photography and shapes and all of these different things. I actually had to learn how to draw the hand, but that's besides the point. But yeah, so like me putting myself in that limitation back in the day, especially this year, to just focus on photography and design and merging those two together using shapes, kind of gave me this new style and this new feel that companies are now reaching out to me for. And the last one that I did was a Skillshare class. So if you guys want to check it out on Skillshare, you can just put my name there and you'll see this. And it's just been awesome. It's been an awesome year. And most of you guys have probably noticed that I use a lot of black people in my work. So yeah. And I use that because I feel like representation is so important in the work that I do. Because growing up in Nigeria, I didn't really have anyone to look up to as far as someone who was a creative and who was able to make a living out of all of this, right? And, you know, I'm thankful for companies like Black Girls Code, Skillshare, Essence Mag, Apple, Google, giving me the opportunity to use my voice and use my skills in the context that I'm using them in. But I can't help but notice that there are other companies out there that did not give me that same freedom. Or even have the idea of hiring a person of color in the upper room to help with decision making. And I'm going to show you some examples here. One, okay? I don't know if you guys remember this. H&M scandal thing that was happening had an African-American boy dressed with a hoodie that says "coolest monkey in the jungle." Now, if you had an African-American in the room and you gave them a voice, this would not have happened, right? Because I feel like homogenous people create homogenous art, right? They create art just from one perspective. Here's another one. Of all people, Prada. They decided to use a blackface for their pins. And that was my initial reaction. What the F? I don't know if you guys are familiar with blackface. Black people could not be on TV shows back in the day. And so to portray black people, white people would paint themselves black, and then they would paint their lips really red and make it big. And so it was just kind of like saying that we look like monkeys. And so black people have a hatred for stuff like this. And so when Prada brought that out, of course, there was this big controversy online, and they took it off right away. But it goes back to say, if you had people of color within the team helping with these decisions, this would not have passed. Same thing with this. I don't know what they were thinking, but God forbid. No. And here's the worst one. A noose as a fashion statement. And for us black people, we know what that represents. And that was like my initial reaction. And but yeah, it's just like if you don't have people of color in these spaces, or even if you have them, if you don't give them a voice, things like this will keep happening, right? And that's why I keep saying that representation matters a lot in the creative space. If you are someone that has the power to hire a person of color within a place where you're able to make decisions for your brand, I highly suggest you do that, because you get to see it from a different perspective, right? And that's why I love what Doug and Kelsey are doing with TX Studio, giving people a residency to be able to create something that they believe in, and it's just been awesome. So thank you, Doug and Kelsey, for that. I love seeing what the people create. So speaking about representation, I was a high school teacher for 3 years. And the reason I went back to my old high school to teach photography and design was exactly because I wanted to be able to be a physical representation of some of the black kids in that community. And because in America, only 2% of the teachers in America are black males, which is very, very low. And crazy, because if you think about how many schools there are here and how many teachers, 2% are black males. And so I wanted to go back to be able to let the kids know that it is possible to be a creative and to work full-time doing that. It was awesome because I got to bond with the kids. We had a lot of fun projects. This is like our staple pose. We did it every picture. And the secret behind this is because, like, when I was a high school teacher, I wanted to post this on Facebook, but you can't post a kid's face on Facebook. So one of my kids was like, what if we just hide part of our face? And I was like, oh, that's smart. So I posted it, and I did not get in trouble. But it was just awesome because I got to teach the kids. I got to show them how I worked. I got to not just show them about how to take pictures, but how to edit people of color, right? Which I don't think a lot of photography people teach. Because I noticed that the black kids were making themselves lighter, and the white kids were making themselves the white kids knew how to edit themselves, but when it came to black people, they were making them lighter. And the black people were making themselves lighter. And I was like, what the heck is going on here? So I taught them how to edit the skin colors and different things like that. So it was really an awesome opportunity. I'm so grateful for it. And going back to limitations, I had the kids just work on two things. I had them work on this project where they just used a portrait and crystal, and I wanted to see what they could create. And this was around the same time I was working on my poster day project, where I made a poster every single day, and one of the kids asked me how I made one of my crystal head posters. And so I taught them, and I put them in this box of, hey, I want you guys to just focus on portraits and crystals, and I want to see what you guys can create. And it was just awesome seeing what they made. And then we also talked about, we worked on just the kids taking pictures of other students in the class, taking pictures of appropriate body parts, okay? I had to say that because some kids were, yeah. And put them in the box, and I just wanted to see like what they were thinking. As you can see, these two are definitely different, and you can kind of see the different styles of the kids. And then, of course, we learned about double exposure and things like that. And this was actually my profile picture for another 6 months. One of my students took this. We were learning how to make double exposures using Flash, and it was just awesome. And so, I think the two biggest things that I would want you guys to learn today is that, one, your perspective matters, right? Your culture matters. Some companies will make you feel like it doesn't, but if you speak up, even if they don't, you can find another company that does. And I'm grateful for companies like Adobe, Apple, Google, allowing me and giving me a free space to voice my opinion and to create art that inspires my community and inspires people that look like me. And then secondly, going back to limitations, to create something unique in your niche, start with your constraints. And don't stop because you have limited resources, right? If you don't have the high-end camera, that's okay. You can start with your iPhone. You can start with a $200 camera and work your way up. And for me, what I did was I always used what I had until I could afford what I needed. And by the time I afforded what I needed, my creative mind was just better, right? Because I had worked in this box for so long that now I have this freedom to create even more things. And so going back to what I was saying, if you're in a space where you feel like you need to hire people of color or allow people of color to have a voice, I think you should definitely take that stance and speak up for them because representation matters. And for younger kids to see someone doing what they want to do in the future gives them a lot of hope. And so that's why me and my wife with our company, we are just working on building it. And once it gets big enough, we would love to hire people of color within the community and our friends to be able to work on projects with us. If Nike comes to us and says they want to do something that has to do with the Latino community here, we would love to be able to bring those people on. And so if you're in a space where you're able to give people of color a chance, I highly suggest that you give them a chance, because you can only do so much if you're around people that just look like you, right? And so my homework for you guys today is two things. The first is to hug someone that doesn't look like you before you leave here today. My pastor always says this at our church, and it's just awesome. I love it. It's like, hey, you're not black. Hey, all right. But seriously, I want you guys to talk to someone that doesn't look like you today before you leave. Get to know them, get to know about their culture, because you will learn so much. And I know for me, I have learned so much at my church because they're Hispanics, they're white people, they're Asian, and we even have potlucks catered to different cultures. And you learn about different dishes and why those dishes were made. And yeah. And here is how you can contact me. This is my Instagram. Coker Studios, our company, my wife and I run it. And that is my email down there. And thanks for coming to my Texas talk. Thank you. And I'll open it up now for any questions that anyone has. Any questions? Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Well, thanks, one, for sharing. I guess my question is this: how do you keep yourself from segregating in your own kind of world?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is you need to make a choice to actually get out of that. Because sometimes we get so comfortable we don't even think about it, right? And so it could be as far as I'm going to meet someone that doesn't look like me today, and I'm going to talk to them and get to know them. Look at all the people here. We all don't look like each other. There's somebody here that you can find today and get some coffee with them later this week. So it's just making that choice. because sometimes we just get lazy and we're like, well, I just like to be my own people. But if you want to broaden your horizon and your perspective on life, I think it's important to be able to find people that don't look like you, especially within your creative community or within your work community. I think it's important. So yeah. Someone had a question? Yes, sir.
So the representation of blackface and blackface and black culture, what's the reaction of the Anglo students, and does it bring them more sort of sensitivity to the representation of black people and black bodies in media in general?
Yeah, I think so. Like Twitter, there's something called Black Twitter, and it's like we're watching for everything. We're policing. That's where I get my news from. But yeah, they dragged Prada for that. They dragged Burberry for the new stain. And I think those companies, like, it's a wake-up call. But to be honest, I am still waiting to actually, like, see the change, right? Because it's easy to just pull it out and keep doing what you're doing, right? But if you pull it out and now you're focused on, like, figuring out ways to avoid that from happening again by hiring people of color within the community to be able to make those decisions, then I think that's a good step. But if your action is just to be like, oh, black people don't like it, we should just take it off, then you can make the same mistake again. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yes, ma'am.
So when it comes to limitations, how did you push yourself past that? Like, well, I just have an iPhone, I want to create, but I don't have the right tools. Like, how did you get past that? I mean, I know you touched on it a little bit, but the emotional side of that blockage.
Yeah.
Instead of like stopping, like going past that.
Yeah, I think if you just see it as maybe like a season that you're in and seeing like what you could learn from it, I think for me that was the most rewarding because I was doing stuff that I never even thought I could do. And so once I got a camera and learned Photoshop, like it was easy for me to just get better. I think it helps with your creativity and how you think and how you use things. And that was what it was for me.
So do you find, like, do you suggest young people to not worry about, oh, I don't have the latest and greatest? Be like, no, use that.
Oh yeah, I think, like I said, use what you have till you can afford what you need. Like, and we live in a world where people are literally making money off of like iPhone pics, And now there's like companies that are trying to. I saw a company one time that was using a lens on a camera to shoot a wedding, but like it was like a phone, and I was like, what is happening? Yeah, you're not gonna shoot my wedding with the phone. That's not. Sorry, but no, I think like it's definitely. I'm not gonna say it's easy. You're gonna see your friends upgrading to like the latest camera, but for me, it's like if they never went through like what you're going through, they're not really gonna appreciate that camera as much as you would, right? So that's what it was for me, and just figuring out ways to like grow within that. So, yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so a lot of when you were talking about your childhood was resonating with me. I'm one of the older people in this room. And when I grew up, my parents didn't have much. I grew up in Germany.
Oh, wow.
But what we had were Lego blocks, and my parents gave us paper and they gave us pens.
Wow.
And it was like, have fun with that.
Right.
For our Christmas presents. And I think sometimes because we live in a more materialistic world now, where children are given basically ready-made things. We built our own dolls and stuff that we played with, and I think that when you limit your children, you're actually doing them a great favor.
Right.
Because you grew up not knowing any better and having to be creative with what you had.
Definitely.
So I'm wondering if maybe also conscious limitation might be a path to get people to be more creative.
Oh yeah. Like even like this month, like I said, I'm just focusing on shapes and portraits, and already this is like September, and I've had opportunities that I never thought would come my way. And now I have opportunities to like do workshops with this stuff. And it's because of that limitation I put on myself, but within that limitation, I was able to find my purpose, my style, my voice. And so yeah, I think having conscious limitations for yourself is actually healthy. Whether it's like, hey, for the next week, I'm gonna use these color palettes, and everything I make will have to use these color palettes. And I think within that, you learn how colors look together and how they look separately, and you start to learn and grow. And so that's why for me, even like the poster day project I was doing, I'm doing a season 2 right now because I grew so much from the first time I did it. And I'm hopefully gonna turn into a book one day, but we'll see. So yeah. Yes, sir.
When you were teaching high school, did you find that doing that also drained your creative or personal or emotional energy that took away from any projects you were taking on?
I think emotionally, yeah, because kids are a lot, and then parents are even worse. That's the part people don't talk about in teaching. Parents are, God bless. Got so many stories. But no, as far as creatively, I think it actually encouraged me. There were sometimes I would make a poster in class, and my kids didn't even know I was making the poster in class. They just thought it was like the lesson for the day. Because I was doing a poster day project, and then every Friday we would make a poster together in class. And it just helped me because some of the kids would make, like I would show them how to make a poster, we would make it, and then I had them make like 2 other posters using the same style and working within those constraints that we have. And it's crazy what they could make. And I had one kid actually teach me because I was like, I don't know how you made this. So I took my chair, sat down, and they taught the whole class. And so it just helped me because I think I learned a lot from the kids, I think more than they learned from me. I learned about patience, because it's easy for me to make this stuff now, but just seeing like how they worked through the boxes that they were put in, and just seeing how they grew was crazy. I had one kid from her sophomore year to her senior year, and now she has her own business and she's in college. She's about to be a sophomore. And so I just saw like how she grew. She came in not knowing any of this stuff, and now she's doing like album covers, she's doing branding, packaging, and stuff like that. So I think those things like that motivate me in the work that I do.